Welcome to Done with Debauchery, a sobriety and wellness podcast where you'll hear honest experiences about navigating life and relationships without alcohol, how to pursue your own personal wellness journey, and share intimate conversations with special guests. I'm your host, Keisha Scott. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Done with Debauchery. I have another amazing conversation to share with you this week, and I just have to say that I'm so thankful that everyone who comes on the podcast as a guest feels safe and trusts me with sharing such personal and important parts of their stories. This week, I'm joined by Stephanie. Stephanie shares how for so long she was chasing the feeling she got from her first night drinking, to what her life was like throughout her college years while she was in her addiction, to how her life has changed with 13 years of recovery and sobriety behind her. Stephanie gives me a different perspective based on her experiences with Alcoholics Anonymous, why it was important for her to find a sponsor and community that she identified with, and how being of service is such an important active part of her recovery. While we can look back and laugh at some situations and stories that Stephanie shares, her experience is no joke. Before we get into the episode, I want to provide a content trigger warning for those who need it. In this episode, there are mentions of sexual assault, self-harm, and other sensitive topics relating to mental health. Although we don't go into specific details, the episode should be listened to with care. Okay, let's get into it. Hi, Stephanie. How's your day going?
It's good. How are you doing?
It's good. I'm so excited to be chatting with you. I've been following you on Twitter for some time, and I just love reading the tweets that you put out. I feel like they're so honest, they're so on point. So I'm just so excited to chat with you and find more about your sobriety journey and what all you've experienced these last 13 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've looked at your stuff too. It looks amazing. I think it's cool that you're doing something like this, within the first year. I just think it's something you can build on, and it probably is. It's almost more helpful when you're talking about it at that point than it is with 13 years, because I think it feels more like realistic when someone's just starting out to hear from someone who has a shorter time. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a really good accountability for me to know that, okay, I am showing up doing this podcast. I'm showing up on social media. Like, I have to stay accountable to myself and to all these other people. So yeah, it helps, but it can also be like, sometimes you're just having one of those days where you're like, I don't feel like smiling like on social media.
Yeah, I have that a lot. I'll be like ghosting for like a month or two. And that's just like how I have to do it. I think some people are great at being consistent. I hope I get to that point, but I definitely allow myself to have like space, just because, I'm a person in recovery and there's always like spiritual growth happening. So
yeah,
sometimes it's not like the best for me to be, out there if I'm going through different things. So
I completely get that. And I think that it is so important, like, to recognize when you need a break and just to like unplug from it. Cause like social media will always be there when you're ready to come back to it.
Exactly.
So where exactly are you located?
So I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, but I have mainly lived in Nashville my whole life, except for a few, short periods. I lived in San Diego for a little bit. I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I lived in St. Petersburg, Florida for college. Okay. But other than that, I've been here.
Nice. And so where you live now in Nashville, is that where you started your sobriety journey? Or take me way back to where it all started.
What's funny? I was thinking about the other day, like the housing, my housing journey in terms of like where I was when I first got sober, and then, where I moved after that and where I moved after that, and all of it's been elevated. So I
That's
don't know if that's
amazing.
part of being sober. I think it is. Because, when I first got sober, I lived in not the nicest apartment complex. Um, I lived in an apartment with my mom and my cat, and I walked to work at this like borderline seedy hotel. I mean, it was like a cheap airport hotel, but like definitely some prostitution was there. Like it wasn't, an upscale place.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, thinking back to where I was when I first got sober and where I am now, it's definitely been a journey upward, um, for sure. And I have a car now, and I drive to work.
Amazing.
I have a license and insurance and all that stuff.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's the funny thing about sobriety, right? Like you improve this one area of your life and it impacts everything else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. Sobriety totally has been the foundation for everything else that I've done professionally. In terms of just the person that I am, I think all of it sprung from the decision to get sober and follow the guidance of someone who had gotten sober. All of that kind of built this life way more closely, you know, uh, a closer vision to what I was hoping for, and even better than what I was hoping for at the time. So it's kind of magical. I think sobriety is magical. And I think that's why I talk about it so much, because, I would be dead. I mean, there's no getting around it. If I had not gotten sober at 23, which I know people think that's a death sentence, getting sober that young, but I just don't think I could have, raged that much longer.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, you know, in the cards for me. I think people underestimate how alcohol affects women's bodies. But I meet women all the time who have cirrhosis, who are on liver transplant lists, in their 20s. And so it's just, we think we have our whole life to just keep drinking that way,
Mhm.
but it's not the case. There's a lot that can happen that will stop you. Um, and is it worth it? I don't know. For me, it wasn't, it wasn't fun towards the
Yeah,
end.
I
So,
agree. And so you do work in the recovery space now.
yeah.
And so what's your role in that?
So now I work as a peer care manager, which is basically, it's like a case manager for people that are in a 12-step immersion program. So they're going through the 12 steps in the middle of the woods in
Oh
Nashville. We're
wow.
just helping them go through the 12 steps. And it's really awesome. But it's like to see the change people experience when they first come to where they are now, and like being these amazing members of society, is pretty miraculous.
Yeah. And probably feels pretty amazing to be part of that journey. Like
Yes,
you're literally saving lives.
I love it.
Beautiful.
It feels like having like being a superhero or something. Not a superhero, but just like
It's
being,
magic.
it's like magic. It's like being a magical part of someone's becoming, Like
Yeah.
you knew it was inside you, and then like they they do it, and then they help other people, and it's just like this awesome thing, and I love it.
Beautiful. So maybe let's back up a little bit. And are you comfortable with sharing a little bit about what your life was like before you got sober and sort of what was that breaking point for you that initiated
Yeah.
the change?
Yeah. So I'm an interesting story in terms of, I didn't start drinking until I was like 18, when I went to college, because my father was an alcoholic, like a really, like, I don't want to say bad alcoholic, but just a really far in his disease of his alcoholism. He was a Vietnam veteran, and Um, he had, some mental health issues, and growing up, seeing his bottom, like his, interaction with alcohol was really devastating for me, just
Mm.
even being adjacent to it. And so I didn't want to drink because of that. Like he was growing up, like this is probably the biggest, one of the biggest influences on my life. But as a child, I had to see my dad be homeless, like in our neighborhood. And that was a really painful like experience, to feel so powerless, and to want him to come home and he can't stop drinking. And so it was just like that whole situation. It caused this like constant sense of worry about him, and um, was very depressing. And it was just like a really hard experience. So for me, at first, I was like, oh no, I never want to drink. I don't ever want to, I hate alcohol. Um, so I was still an addict though, in my essence. So, and I don't think there was any way to avoid that. So it just wasn't alcohol, but it was relationships, I think was probably my first addiction, in terms of like codependency and just like being really attached to people. Um, and, eating disorders and different things like that. I feel like those were kind of like my addictive ways of acting out, before I found substances. So in college, I found substances, and um, I've just I went to college, and I was this really shy, insecure person, and didn't want that to be how I was in college. So when I got there, I wanted it to be like, this is a fresh start. Like I'm gonna hang out with like the cool people or whatever in my head. It's just
Yeah.
so silly now. But and to me, the coolest guys are the guys that I like are soccer guys and skater guys and drug dealers. So
They are the hottest.
So they're pretty hot. So I got in, was hanging out with soccer guys when I first got there, and they were like, "Come on, we're gonna go to Tampa in this limo and like go clubbing and stuff like that." And I was sitting in this limo with them and had total imposter syndrome, just feeling like I'm not cool enough to be hanging out with these people. Like, what am I doing? What do I say? How do I act? I have no idea. And they were like, "Do you want some champagne?" And at first I said no, and then I drank some, and then I drank the rest of the night as much as I could, as much as I could get. It was just like it calmed me down, and I was able to just be with these people, and I had so much fun, and it was amazing. And that first night of how that felt, that sense of relief, and that sense of like I can't get enough, I think I was chasing that pretty much the rest of the time, like that I drank. Um,
And that
but
just sounds like such a natural like progression of the evening. Like you're feeling a little insecure and retreated, and then alcohol lowers your inhibition. So all of a sudden you're feeling loose, you're having a good time, like you're out of your own head. So I get that and I've been there.
it was, yeah, the feeling of that first night was amazing. I felt like I belonged, and I never felt that way. So it was like, okay, this is a solution for me. I remember thinking that. I remember being hungover the next day after class and just thinking, oh, I feel horrible, but that was amazing. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
And I did. And I drank a lot. And that's the other thing that I think pointed me that to the, later deciding I was an alcoholic, was I could drink a lot from the very beginning. Like there was a very high tolerance. And also I didn't have a stopping point even from the beginning. So it was like, once you start me up, I'll never stop. Like,
Yeah.
one drink, I'm gonna keep going until I pass out. And that is a consistent, never been any, it's always been that way. And so, but I think for me, the thing I noticed, I started to have consequences pretty immediately, in terms of just like relationships, like getting into fights with guys I was dating or friends, or getting alcohol poisoning, getting in trouble, like just different things were happening. And it was pretty quick. Like some people don't have consequences like that, like when they drink, like I had friends in college that drank and didn't have any of those things happen. So for me, it was like pretty consistent and, you know, I just had stuff going on, but I was able to keep being a good student and like do all that. So it's like, as long as I wasn't like interfering with my college academics, I think I wasn't worried about it. And I think I didn't, I didn't have like too much health issues or anything like that. So I was kind of like, we'll just keep it going. And I did. And it seemed normal. I don't think I felt like it was weird at first. I thought I was just like, I just have to learn how to level it out.
Yeah, and so sorry to interrupt,
No,
but was
you're
it so like binge drinking more so like on the weekends when you went out, or was it an everyday we're drinking
It
situation?
wasn't every day. I think at first it was binge drinking. So it was like maybe, when there were parties on the weekend and maybe like once or twice during the week. If people were going out, I wasn't like drinking by myself or anything
Yeah.
first. It was really just like with people. So if there was
Yeah.
like a guy or like friends that were going out and like there was something happening, then I would drink. But when I did, it was crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's how it starts for so many people, especially in high school and college years.
Exactly. Yeah, it was not like every day or anything. But it just was excessive.
Mhm.
And so, and it kind of was like that for like the first 3 years of college. It was what I just described. Um, but in my junior year of college, I got assaulted, which basically I passed out in my room, but like the dorm I was in was like a circle and there would be a party going on in that dorm. So people would go in and out of each other's apartment, like in and out of, they just have your door open. And so in my room had like the bathroom, like that people would use. And
Okay.
I guess a guy came in. I don't really know what happened because I blacked out. So, but I just woke up and it was a guy that I didn't know. And after like just trying to have sex with me, and like it really messed with me when that happened. And I think a kind of a switch got flipped. I definitely had sexual trauma in my childhood. And so I don't know if some of that came back up because of that experience, but I got really um, antisocial in terms of like, I still wanted to go out, but I started to want to do drugs and do coke. I started to do cocaine like all the time. And I started to wear like baggy clothes. Like it was just like trying to like kind of protect myself or something, but also kind of going off the deep end with my drinking and starting to do drugs. So that's when I started to do it like every day. And I started dating the guy I was buying coke from, and he was another student, and and ironically, I think he's sober now. We talked a few years ago,
That's
and
amazing.
he was in AA, so it's a good ending. But yeah, so me and him were dating, and we were partying every day, and I just started to kind of look like a drug addict too. I got like really super skinny and like, just kind of began to lose it, and started lying to get money from my parents, and it just like all this stuff. Like it just got a lot worse. And that happened pretty much junior year, and then I still passed magically. I don't know how. I didn't go to class. I would just go to my exams. But I passed and went on to senior year. We broke up and I was by myself. And then I started to drink and do drugs by myself every day. And I think that was kind of like when it, started to go really downhill, was when I became comfortable doing that by myself, like not being with people. Um, and what ended up happening my senior year of college is I went on a bender during my comprehensive exam. So that's the exam that you take to pass your major so that you graduate. And during that comprehensive exam, I was drunk from sun up to sundown that whole month that we were doing that. And dating this guy that kept getting my car impounded. It was just like crazy that whole month. And my medication that I was taking was in my car. And so I wasn't taking it. And it's an antidepressant that you're not supposed to go off of. So I had like kind of like a meltdown and ended up in the psych ward. Um, or I'm thinking I threatened to hurt myself or something. I'm not even sure exactly what happened. Um, but my family flew down to Florida and had an intervention, and they were like, we don't think you should stay in college. Like, it's obviously you're having some issues. So I decided to go to treatment. I mean, I didn't decide to go to treatment. It was kind of like, you're going to treatment. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I got taken out of school. And I think for me, over the years of being sober, I don't think I realized what a big deal that was, but I'd always been a really good student. And leaving college early and not graduating on time was very traumatic for me. And just leaving that way, like, it was just like, and I was like, when we were leaving college, like with my stuff in my car, I was throwing up from withdrawal. So I was throwing up in like this plastic, like, gas station bag or something.
Oh
Like,
no.
I'm leaving college, like all my friends are still there, and I'm just like uncontrollably vomiting and like driving off. Like that's how I left. And so it was just a really devastating experience. And I wish I had gotten sober right after that. That was not my bottom. So I went to treatment. I couldn't stay sober during treatment. It was outpatient. I started dating a guy that was in there that had like an ankle bracelet. He was like on house arrest or something.
No.
And then I got kicked out. And then I went to San Diego. They were like, go live with your sister. She's, has her master's in social work. She'll fix you. Like, and so I went to live with her, got a DUI, totaled my car.
Oh no.
Just lies, lots of lies. Like, and so I went to an inpatient treatment, got kicked out of that. So
This was in your early 20s.
this was all in my early 20s, 21, 22, 23. And so I convinced my family after that inpatient, it's not the drinking, it's something, I don't remember what I said it was, but I was like, I can drink. Look, I'm going to finish my degree, see that I can get it together. So I did. I finished my degree, but I was still drinking. I think I said it was the drugs. I was like, I need to stop drugs. So I stopped doing drugs. And then I just was drinking. And I think what ended up happening that last year was it just got really depressing, and I still had to hide it because I was still drinking a lot. So I was like hiding it in my room, like in the closet or under my bed, and drinking by myself, and just like super depressed, and it just this isolated kind of zombie like feeling of almost like not like a shell of a person. I wasn't like a real person anymore. My life revolved around drinking, and it was very isolated because I was scared to go out because I didn't know what was going to happen. There's just a lot of craziness that would happen. I ended up in Tijuana one time. Like, it was just like, I didn't know what was going to happen,
Yeah.
So,
I don't mean to laugh, but like,
so it's hilarious. Wait, I have to tell this story. So,
please.
when I was in San Diego, and my sister, I still had my sister convinced I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So I got a job at Target, and I was going to like the Target orientation, like get your orientation for this job. My sister was out of town with her fiance, and she was like, "Be good, go to your orientation. I'm gonna have my friend Troy's gonna stay over at the house to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do." I was like, whatever. So I went to the orientation, and there was a cute guy there. He was training too for his security position or something. So he was like, let's go get lunch. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. We go get lunch. I get drunk immediately. Like, I don't remember the day that much, but I know that we went to get lunch. I got drunk. We went to a party, and
Did you go back to the end of training?
yeah, well, we finished.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I had that job, so I know I finished what
Okay.
I was supposed to do. But we went to this party. He was like, "You're a mess. I'm leaving you at this party that you don't know anybody." He just left me
Oh
there.
my God.
And so, no worries. I meet other people there, these older gentlemen, and they're like, "We're gonna go out. Like, come with us. We're gonna go out on the town." And so, I get more wasted. We end up going out in Tijuana instead of like San Diego. So we go to Tijuana, and I'm like so messily drunk in Tijuana. I'm glad I didn't end up getting like kidnapped, or I don't know. I survived it and then made it home that night, like in a cab. That was like angels or something, but I made it back to the house. And Troy didn't say anything to my sister. I don't know why, but
He's like,
whatever.
she's back at least in one piece.
She's here. He's here. That's good.
Yeah, he's like, and he doesn't want to, he's supposed to be responsible for you. He doesn't
He
want
threw
the
his hand
blame.
up. He was just like, she made it home.
Yeah. Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, so stuff like that. I think it was just like, and that was not the only time stuff like that would happen. I
Mm.
would run off, like I'd go out to bars with friends and run to the bar next door by myself, but just like crazy things. Like, um, and I never knew like what was, who I'd end up with, where I'd end up. Like, so
Yeah.
that's why the isolation started, just to like protect me or something. Um, but so I was wrapping up a lot of my consequences too. So my DUI, I had to do this class to get my license back, and I did the class and I passed it, but there was an extra part because my DUI was in California and I was in Tennessee. So I had to do this extra like assessment. And I was drunk at the assessment, not intentionally. I was drunk the day before, and then I was shaking. And I was like, ooh, I don't want to be shaking in my drug and alcohol assessment. That won't
Yeah.
look good. So I drank that morning to like stop shaking, and I did not pass the assessment. And he was like, you have to go to 25 AA meetings before I'll give you your certificate. And I think around that time, I kind of threw my hands up in terms of like, I have a problem. It was that. And then around that time, I had this feeling one night that was like, if you continue this, you're going to die. And it was like a real, like, intuitive feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
something I took seriously, like that you can keep this up, but it's not going to go well. And so, and part of me didn't care about that. Like part of me was like, whatever, like I don't really care anyway. But part of me did. And so I really tried to, I got on my knees and I prayed and I just said, God, can you just please help me get sober? I don't know how to get sober. I've tried so many times. But if you can just help me like actually get it, like that would be amazing. And so I did that. And then I had a sponsor who had taken me before when I had like 90 days. So, oh yeah, wait, I have to tell this story too. So I got 90 days sober at one point, which was huge for me. I could never get that much
It's
time.
huge. Yeah, that's a major accomplishment.
So I was very proud of myself. So proud of myself when I got my first 90 days that I went to go tell my neighbor that I had done a bunch of drugs with. I was like, let me go tell my neighbor, I'll help save his life too. So I went over there. Let me tell you about Alcoholics Anonymous and how it saved my life. And he was like, oh, that's great. Do you want a Miller Lite? And I was like, yes.
Fuck.
I was like, yes, that sounds good. And then I just went off like on a tangent. So
Because also 90 days, you must be cured. If you could stop drinking
exactly,
for
that's
90
like
days.
amazing. I was even trying to help people. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Aw.
here.
It's
So
so innocent.
I know it was crazy. Um, so, which I'm actually weirdly glad that that happened because it demonstrated to me like what addiction is like the forgetfulness, like the mental blank spot of like you can completely forget all the consequences and just
Mm.
in that moment, and just give everything away. And so it was helpful to me to see that in myself. But I got back with my sponsor and she told me, if you do what I tell you to do for a week, I'll take you back. And I did. She's still my sponsor now. And it's worked. I mean, for me, I did the 12 steps. I'm of service as much as possible. I'm really involved in um, different things. I don't think you have to be, you know, service focused in the program, but I think it's important to be service focused to other people with your same affliction. So other people that have, an alcohol problem, an addiction problem. For me, service and a spiritual connection are the two most important things that keep me sober and that have kept me sober. And then the humility of listening to people that have done it.
Mhm.
But
And
yeah,
so, in order to get your license back, you had to complete those AA meetings. So that reconnected you with your sponsor and what started you down your 13 years of
yeah,
sobriety.
it did.
Wow. And so you had tried AA before when you got your 90 days.
Uh-huh.
And so did you connect with it right away?
What's really funny? I went to AA so much. Like my first meeting was when I was 19. I hated it. I got yelled at by like an old timer. The first
Hmm.
meeting I went to, and I was like, "This sucks," whatever. I hate this. And
Yeah.
and then I started in San Diego. I actually liked it. There were really cool women that would hang out with me, and you know, I, part of me is like, oh, I wish you had gotten it because they were so nice and like you would have had friends, like you would have been set up if you had like taken it
Yeah.
seriously. But I really didn't. I think I like didn't even listen to what they were saying. I just knew I was supposed to go to meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the difference was when I did connect with it, it was out of desperation. It was like I really don't know how to do this. I like my sponsor. I liked her,
Hmm.
so that was probably the first connection I had to the program, was finding someone who worked the program that I liked her. And she was just like cute and crazy and had time and kind of said off the wall things. And I really liked that about her. And she's still like that.
It
Um,
wasn't just this bland, dry, like
oh
you
God,
could
no.
actually connect and like identify with her and her life.
She's like a Muppet that is like in a horror movie, but is like really cute. I don't know. I can't explain. She just is like sick like me, but healthy in her
Mhm.
her like healing,
Yeah.
And so I just identified with her in a lot of ways. And she's a very respectable person, though. I shouldn't say it like that. She's a very respectable person.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So oh yeah, I did want to hear what your impression of it was. Because like I said, I do talk to a lot of people. Um and they don't connect with it, and I have ideas about why that is, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, so I first, like, I think everyone knows about AA, so I've heard about it for my whole life. And I think it was in 2019, I was seeing a therapist and talking to her about my drinking, and she was really big on just advocating for getting some sort of community. You don't have to do it by yourself, like, get people around you that are like-minded. And she was not pushing AA, but it was one of the recommendations she made. And she's like, just try it. What does it hurt to try? And immediately I had my backup and was just not open to the idea. And I think it's because it has such, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but like when I think of like AA, I think of like a dingy church basement. It's a bunch of like older men. It's what you see like on TV. Everyone's sitting in a circle. So that's what I associated it with. And immediately I was like, I don't fit in there. It's not for me. So she just kept encouraging me, and she's like, okay, if you're not going to go to AA, why don't you try Al-Anon? Because I do have people in my family who have abused alcohol for years. So
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
like, try that. It's a little bit softer introduction.
totally.
So I did go to one Al-Anon meeting in person, and I'm very like, I don't like to do new things by myself. Like, it's very scary. So I went, and I like showed up early because I wasn't sure like what the situation was going to be like to get a seat. So I like got there, and I was like the only one there for like 15 minutes, just like sitting in the room. And I was like, this is unbearable. But so everybody came, and I just felt so unprepared. Like, everyone had the book that they were reading from. I didn't have the book. And I was just like almost embarrassed to be there because I just felt like an amateur. But it was, everyone was so kind and so sweet. And everyone shared. I didn't share. I was like, if I say one thing, I'm going to burst into tears. So I'm just going to sit here in silence.
Mhm.
Um, and I just almost felt like everyone that's sharing is going through things that are so much harder than what I'm going through. What I experienced was 10 years ago. Like, I don't need to be here. Like, I'm taking up space for somebody who could be sitting here that needs it so much more than me. So, even though the experience in itself was not bad, yeah, I almost felt like guilty and like shame for being there. So I
Mm,
never went back. And then I continued on with my drinking, and I would also party and like do like coke was my drug of choice with like in certain scenarios. And then that brings that like next day like spiraling for 2 days, trying to recover, trying
yeah,
to just get yourself back to like your operating level of like
yeah,
whatever normal is. So I think the first time I went to AA was during the pandemic. So everything was online, which for me made it so much easier to show up. So I think in total, I've been to maybe four AA meetings. They were all online, Toronto based, where I am. And for the first one, it was like I did like the black screen. I'm not saying anything. Like, I can barely say my name without like crying.
yeah,
And everyone I encountered was nice. Like, so many people messaged me on the side and gave me their phone numbers, said reach out anytime, like call me if you need help. Like, everyone was so welcoming, and it was almost like that scared me. I was like, they're trying to like bring me in. I also felt like, okay, I'm like more at the time, more of a binge drinker. I'm not drinking all day, going on benders so much. Even if I was drinking every day by the end of it, it wasn't all day every day, so it must not be that bad,
yeah, totally.
was like the script I was telling myself. So yeah, I just never immediately felt connected. There was a few times that I did share in the meetings, and just the introduction of saying, "Hi, I'm Keisha. I am an alcoholic," like made my stomach hurt. And even now, I don't necessarily identify with the term alcoholic, but I almost feel like it doesn't matter. Like, I know that I have a problem with alcohol and I have a drinking problem on some level, but I just wasn't ready to say those words.
Yeah, I think that's normal.
So I think that was a big part of it for me. And then the other part was that I really associated it with having faith and being a religious aspect,
Yeah,
which was something that I went to a private Christian school growing up, but my family, my like core family was not religious. My grandparents were, but like my family didn't go to church, so I immediately felt disconnected from the people that I was growing up with. So then going into AA again, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about God. Like, do I have to believe in God to be here? So it was just like, instead of sticking around and getting answers to those questions, I kind of put my back up and was like, no, I'll do a different way because there's already two red flags for me here.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's like I think a lot of what I hear, especially the higher power concept, the spirituality concept. I think sometimes we come in there and we think, like, I remember coming in and thinking, well, I don't want to become churchy. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not a churchy Christian, because I grew up Christian, but I felt like there was a lot of hypocrisy. I don't like that. And I didn't like the concept of telling people they were going to hell. Like, there was a lot of things I didn't like. And so when I came in, I was like, ugh, I don't want to have to become that, become like I didn't want to become like a nun or something. I was like,
Yeah.
that's not me at all, you know. And luckily, I'm glad, you know, I realized that wasn't the case. It's definitely like your own conception of a higher power.
Hmm.
You know, I've worked with people that they have like a female like higher power. They have um you know, a person that they was like a mentor, and that's who they talk to in their head. That's like their higher power. So it's like there's these different like concepts and stuff. For me, it's just been such a personal journey that like I've taken things from different, you know, uh spiritual programs. Like there's some concepts I like from Buddhism, there's some concepts I like from Christianity, there's some concepts I like from A Course in Miracles. Then all of those are a part of my spiritual program. And there's also the divine feminine that I really like too, like angels and goddess cards and stuff like that. So I
And like
think
I can get down with that. Like all that I could completely like relate to.
yeah. And so for me, it was like learning that that was okay, you know, like
Hmm.
that was my personal relationship, my personal conception that I get to build and work on every day. And no one's telling me what that looks like. They're just sharing what their experiences, but nobody's telling me, Stephanie, this is what your spiritual experience needs to be. You know, if it was like that, I wouldn't want to be a part of it. That would really bother me.
Yeah.
I hate authority. Like I don't want anybody telling me what to do. So, you know, for me, that's been the probably the saving grace of it has been just like you're building this concept yourself. You're taking these words, you know, from the program and like applying it to your life and your concept, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that that spiritual journey is almost something that just goes hand in hand with sobriety anyways. At least like that's what I'm kind of realizing now. I'm not sure, but I'm 8 months sober from alcohol. Thank you. But yeah, even over this time, like the more clarity I'm getting, the more connected I'm feeling to myself, the more interested I'm becoming in things like meditation and yoga. So I do understand also now, like coming from a more clear space, a clear head, how that can all tie in.
yeah, totally. And I do think too, because I was like, you know, in the beginning, I was like, it has to be the 12 steps. It has to be, you know, da 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 da. But honestly, I think all of it is a spiritual journey. And I think that we all have different ways that we go about our spiritual growth. And I think that recovery and getting sober is the same way. We all have different ways of recovering. And to me, what's important is that people are recovering. Like that is what I care about. I just want people to be sober and have a life.
Hmm.
And so if it looks all different kinds of ways, you know, I need to be open minded to that because I don't want to block anyone from their growth or their healing, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and just because it looked a certain way for me doesn't mean it has to for other people.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone who might be considering trying AA but is scared of making that next step?
Yes, my advice would be to um well, one, don't go by just one meeting in terms of how you judge it. All meetings are different. So I would definitely recommend trying a few different ones before you make a judgment about it. Um, the second thing I would say is for me, what I like women's meetings and I like book study meetings because book studies are just, you're literally just in the literature. So it's not like a person's opinion, you
That's
know,
the big book.
the big book, or it's the 12 and 12, or it's, you know, there's different books. Like that's
Okay.
meant to be a literature study. But I feel like a literature study is literally like a class. Like you're just looking at the words and seeing what you identify with and what you don't, and hearing people's different experience. But I feel like that's sometimes better than just an open discussion because you can't go wrong with this book that's helped millions of people. Um, in my opinion, I feel like it has a lot of good in there.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I would say is probably uh, to try ones that you identify with. Like I have a girl I'm working with. She really likes this meeting that's a pagan 12-step meeting. And so they have like, it's a different concept of a higher power. This is the focus, and they get crystals instead of chips. Like there's just different things that you can find that are more aligned with what you're into. And like for me at 23, young people's meetings were what I was into. And so that's another thing too, is like maybe you don't want to go to a meeting where everyone's like 30 years older than you. Going to a meeting where everyone's like in their early 20s is kind of nice because you kind of can all relate. So there's just different things to consider. And just there's tons of meetings. But also, I did want to say I'm not a spokesperson for Alcoholics Anonymous. So please, nobody come at me like that because I'm definitely.
No, I don't think anybody would. But I love getting your perspective on it because a lot of the people that I've connected with so far online are not members of AA or haven't tried it and have gone a different route. So I think it's important to hear from all different
Yeah,
experiences. And it
definitely.
also makes me wonder, like, is there value for me trying it again now, even though I feel like not that I'm out of the woods, but like those crucial days where like I thought I was gonna break are kind of behind me, but I know it's still every day I have to show up to maintain it. So
Yeah.
is there value in me trying it now and maybe trying like a secular or a pagan meeting to see if I do connect more?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's always good to stay connected and centered inside yourself and see if there's something that, you're being nudged towards, like, okay, this could be helpful. I'm really into that. Like, I think that it's an evolution. So
Hmm.
my program has looked so different over the past 13 years. It's not looked all the same. um there was a time I was like only into like A Course in Miracles and going to Unity like church. Like that was all I was doing. I wasn't going to meetings or anything. So
Yeah.
I think there's just like different, you know there's just a different, part of your growth that you have to just see like what you're being called to and kind of like have fun going towards that and trying it.
Yeah. And so what are some of the non-negotiables for you in like your daily practices that help you stay sober?
I have to pray, God help me stay sober today. Like I have
Aw.
to do that. And then I have to at night say thank you for helping me stay sober. That's something I've done every day. Like I have to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and the other is being of service. I think just making myself available as often as possible to supporting other people in their recovery, I feel like is vital for my recovery. If I get away from that, it's like, I don't know, it just is a lot harder. And when I do that, it makes things smoother for me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just a really important part. I don't know how else to explain it, but I do need that to be available as often as possible.
It's kind of like anything, right? Like going to the gym or eating healthy. Like if you do it every day, it's easier to maintain. But then
Yeah,
if you don't do it for 2 weeks, getting back into it is where the challenge is.
yeah, for sure. And it helps that it's like my work now. I think that working with people, so it's like you automatically like that puts you in that position of service. But I like that I do it outside of work too. I think it's just important too. Um, I think it's what it's supposed to be, even on a spiritual level. I think when we grow spiritually, it's important to share that message. Or like Maya Angelou said, when you learn, teach. Like when you have come up, when you've had a come up in some way, you need to reach your hand back and help someone else. Like that is part of you going forward. So I just think that's really important.
That's a beautiful quote, and it reminds me of something I read on your Twitter that I can't remember how you phrased it exactly, but it was something like, I can't keep my own sobriety if I don't give a little bit away, like if
Mhm.
you don't pass that on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe in that too. Beautiful. So I don't want to kind of go past what you said without acknowledging your assault that happened in college, and I am very sorry that you had to experience that. Was there any justice for you, or did that person have to face any accountability?
No, I did start the process of it, and it was interesting because he was friends with one of the sports teams, and I was kind of getting they were kind of harassing me a little bit, not about that, but I think I was feeling intimidated, like I didn't want to
Yeah.
do anything. And I feel okay with that. I feel okay that I didn't ever, you know, press charges. And part of that, I think, is because I was blacked out. So there was this question of like, did I get up and go out and like talk to someone? It's like, I don't know.
Some self-doubt.
There was some self doubt because of just not, and I'm not saying this for anyone else in terms of if they black out, like I'm not saying anyone's accountable. I'm just talking about for myself.
Hmm.
I didn't know, exactly what had happened. And, but I feel comfortable that I didn't press charges against that guy or this other guy. I had that happen. A similar thing happen in college too. I don't know why. I feel like there's karma. I feel like I don't need to be the one that punishes them. I feel like their soul will hurt from things like that, just like my soul hurts from things that I do that I don't make amends for. So, I think it's just more of like a letting it go on a spiritual level or something.
They'll get what's coming to them.
Yeah, I mean, if that, if they, hopefully they don't do it anymore. Hopefully it was like just, I don't know. There's just, you never know with that stuff. Like, but I definitely think in certain situations it is a good idea to go ahead and follow through with it. It just wasn't right for me at that time. So,
Yeah, and that's totally okay. And it's just so scary that I think, especially in the United States, it's something that is so common on college campuses. And I know there's so many groups like speaking out against it now, but it's a scary place to be,
yeah, for sure.
especially like with alcohol.
Oh yeah, totally. And so I'm actually going back to my college to host a recovery week next month. And the
Wow.
girl who helped book everything is like she's like actually that's her job is like being a advocate for women and anyone that experience sexual assault or like anything like that. So they actually have a position now of someone that like helps people with stuff like that, which is really cool.
Good. That's amazing. And it's such a, like a full circle moment for you to
I
go
know. I'm so
back.
excited. My soul is happy, like
Oh,
to get to go back and just offer, some hope, like to people that are there, and to just get to be of service. I feel like it is a full circle moment, and I'm very excited about
that's
it.
so beautiful. Well, I'll keep you posted. Like I want to know how it goes. I can't wait.
Okay.
I can't wait. So before we wrap up, what's one thing that you wish that you knew about sobriety before you quit drinking?
Oh my gosh, I wish I knew that sobriety was so fun. Like, I think I thought it was just boring. Your social life is dead or something. And for me, it's like not been that way at all. I can be just as crazy and I can, kind of be this like what I wanted to be then, but sober, which is way nicer because
Yeah.
consequences aren't there, and I remember what I do. So, just that I can have fun and like still do a lot of fun stuff and not have to be inebriated to do it.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. So, how can people find you if they want to follow along with your work and your sobriety journey?
So there's a few ways they can find me on Instagram. It's Stephanie is sober. On Twitter, Steph Sober Life, and I have a website where I sell planners, and that is sweetestfreedommarket.com.
Perfect. I'll also tag it in the show notes so people can find it easily.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation.
Oh, good. Thank you for having me. It was awesome. I'm so glad I got to hear your perspective.
My pleasure. This is Keisha signing off on another episode of Done with Debauchery. If you liked what you heard, please share and subscribe. You can also find me at donewithdebauchery.com or follow along on Instagram at donewithdebauchery. Thanks for listening.